Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Got a soundbite I want to play for you just to close the loop on our conversation about Reverend Luis Leon demonizing people he calls the captains of the religious right. These are evangelical leaders. That's who he's talking about here. And he's accusing us of calling for blacks to be back in the back of the bus. That we want women, apparently barefoot and pregnant, we want women to be back in the kitchen. And we want immigrants to be on their side of the border. Well, yeah, we want illegal immigrants to be on their side of the border. What part of illegal do you not understand, Reverend Leon? Yes, we do want illegal immigrants on their side of the border. Legal immigrants, we want them on our side of the border. They're legal. They've been invited here. They are welcome here. We want them here. We will open our hearts and our arms to them. It's the illegal immigrants that we got a problem with. And, of course, he doesn't make any distinction between that in these words. Now, Jay Carney was asked about this because the president was there. President sitting right there in pew 54 listening to this guy accuse conservative evangelical Christians of being blatant, out-and-out racists. And Ed Henry of Fox News has this exchange with Jay Carney. Just have audio for you, but listen, this happened this morning at the White House.
He is not a politician. This is not a senator or a member of Congress or the president. This was a sermon that at a church here that's been visited by presidents of both parties for many, many years.
And I don't have anything more for you, he says. So he says, look, he can say anything you want. He's a pastor. So you can say anything you want as a pastor unless you're Louis Giglio, in which case you're going to get bounced from being able to offer an invocation at the inauguration. But as long as you're attacking President Obama's political opponents on Easter Sunday from the pulpit, hey, knock yourself out. That is Jay Carney's attitude. Now, let's talk about what happened with Dr. Ben Carson here, and this will be clip 4. Rob, Dr. Ben Carson, remember I set this up. He's a black, he's African-American, strong Christian, believes in the Bible, believes in the biblical view of marriage. And he said that openly on the Sean Hannity program last Wednesday or Thursday night. Now listen carefully to what Ben Carson said and what he didn't say. Now what the left has tried to say, and I don't have a problem with making a linkage between these two things, frankly, because I think you can connect the dots between these various groups and what they agitate for and all of that. But Dr. Ben Carson is not saying that these groups are equal to one another. He's just listing a different set of groups, none of which have the authority, moral authority, to redefine marriage. That's all he's saying. This group doesn't have the right. This group over here doesn't have the right. This group over here doesn't have the right. And the left is accusing him of saying they're all equivalent, that he was drawing an equivalence between what these groups were about. And, of course, he was doing no such thing. But here's what Dr. Carson said on the Sean Hannity program last Wednesday.
Marriage is between a man and a woman. It's a well-established, fundamental pillar of society. And no group, be they gays, be they NAMBLA, be they people who believe in bestiality, it doesn't matter what they are, they don't get to change the definition. So it's not something that's against gays, it's against anybody who wants to come along and change the fundamental definitions of pillars of society.
So, and for that, for simply telling the truth, that marriage is between a man and a woman. And by the way, if this linkage was a problem, then they should be all over Sonia Sotomayor. Again, this is an illustration of the blatant, gross double standard that exists with the secular media. Because Sonia Sotomayor, in the oral arguments over Proposition 8 in DOMA, she said this to Mr. Olson, Ted Olson, who was the attorney who was attacking DOMA. He said this, Mr. Olson, the bottom line that or I guess he was defending Prop 8. The bottom line that you're being asked, and it is one that I'm interested in the answer. If you say, this is Sonia Sotomayor now, this is a liberal, that's why she doesn't get in trouble for this, because she's a card-carrying secular fundamentalist. If you say that marriage is a fundamental right what state restrictions could ever exist, meaning what state restrictions with respect to the number of people, with respect to the incest laws, etc., what's left? That's a very, very good question. And this leaves her open to exactly the same accusation that was leveled at Ben Carson, that the left should be saying about Sonia Sotomayor. This is inexcusable. You are linking homosexuality with polygamy. You're linking it with incest. That's a horrible, no good, very bad comparison. What were you thinking? You are not a wise Latina after all. You ought to resign. You ought to get yourself off the Supreme Court bench. You have no right to be there for drawing this parallel between homosexuality and polygamy and incest. But she did it right there in front of God and everybody. And it's a very good question. You know, we've often made that point that once you break the threshold of man-woman marriage, there's simply no logical place to stop. There is no logical place to stop. You can't stop with two men getting married or two women getting married. What is to prevent one man marrying two women, or one woman marrying two men, or one man marrying four women? There's no logical reason why you should deny them the privilege that you have given to two people of the same sex. If you're going to call that marriage, and you can say the only basis for that is that you have a love and a care and a commitment to each other, then what if one man has a commitment to three or four women and is willing to say, hey, I love them all, I'm committed to them all, or five women or eight women, or two men making a commitment to four women, we're all going to live in the same house, we all love each other, we're all committed to each other, we're all going to get married. I mean, there's just simply no logical place to stop. And of course, the problem is it's children that get chewed up in the process of this. It just becomes a recipe for transmitting sexually transmitted diseases in a way that's legal and has the support then of the legal establishment. So anyway, Sonia Sotomayor does exactly the same thing that Ben Carson, and you haven't heard a peep about that. In fact, if you didn't listen to Focal Point, you probably wouldn't even know that Sonia Sotomayor had talked about polygamy and talked about incest. So anyway, so we hear Ben Carson simply say, look, marriage is a union of a man and a woman. That's the way God's defined it. That's the way it is. Never going to be any different. Nobody has a right to change the definition. So then he goes on, I believe this is on Wolf Blitzer's program, and they just climbed on him. They landed on him like a falling safe for this. And, this is why Ben Carson's not going to run for president. I will flat out guarantee you Ben Carson is never going to run for any public office the rest of his life. Why? Because he had no idea. He simply had no idea of the hatred that exists in the homosexual activist community. The raw, unvarnished, vitriolic hatred and animus and hostility that is directed toward people who support Judeo-Christian values. He didn't know it was out there. He's a nice guy. He doesn't hate anybody. He doesn't have a venomous bone in his body toward any living soul. And I think this has completely blown him away. He had no idea of the demonic hatred that exists on the part of the media and secular fundamentalists against people who support the idea, defend the idea of natural marriage. So here's Wolf Blitzer going on the attack, and poor Ben Carson, you talk about being sent to the back of the bus. I feel sorry for the guy. He had no idea that this kind of blitzkrieg of animosity and vitriol and unvarnished hatred was going to be directed at him. There's a petition now, the John Hopkins students. We don't want this guy to be our commencement speaker. He's a bigot. He's a homophobe. He's a hate monger. We don't want to even be associated with this guy. We don't care that he's African American. We don't care that he's the leading pediatric neurosurgeon in the entire history of civilization, saved countless lives of children with the skill of his hands. We don't care about that. He's a bigot. He's a hater. He's a homophobe. We don't want him even associated with our graduation. And Ben Carson meekly saying, okay. I mean, he's just surrendering. He's not giving up his position, but he is apologizing all over himself. Here is clip number 5, Rob. Let's listen.
I want to give you a chance, Dr. Carson, to explain what you meant, because it sounded like you were lumping in gay marriage with basically criminal activity, whether it's bestiality or the man-boy love association. Go ahead and explain.
Sure. Okay. Well, first of all, let me say that my comments are my opinion. They have nothing to do with Johns Hopkins. Secondly, I have always advocated equality for everyone. As a Christian, we have a duty to love everyone and to love them as ourselves. So, you know, I love gay people, I love straight people. So this was really, I think, on my behalf, somewhat insensitive, and I certainly apologize if I offended anyone, because I was not in any way comparing, you know, gays with people who engage in bestiality or sexual child abuse. The point that I was trying to make is that there is no group that really gets to have a special dispensation so that they can change the definition of something that was established by God, you know, thousands of years ago, and has been a traditional pillar of society.
So Dr. Carson, completely unapologetic about this. God has designed it. God has defined it. It's been a pillar of civilization, pillar of society since the dawn of civilization. And here he continues his apology tour, clip 6.
I feel very bad that people were offended. That was certainly not my intention.
Because
it
sounded,
you know, I apologize for that.
It sounded, Dr. Carson, like you were lumping in bestiality, pedophilia together with same-sex marriage, and you understand how offensive that could be.
I see in retrospect that was certainly not the intention at all. The intention was simply to say that there is no group, and you know, you could pick any group of different things, and I should have picked a different group of things to make the point. But you know, one of the things I'm learning as I spend more time on television is how to be more artful, and you know, this is a good lesson in doing that. And you know, the basic thing that we were really talking about, of course, is whether a group has the ability to change the definition of marriage.
So Dr. Carson apologizing. He has absolutely nothing to apologize for. You know, he's saying, what I've learned is you have to be careful about your choice of words. That's not what this lesson is about, Dr. Carson. This lesson is about the unvarnished hatred and vitriol of the left toward people who defend traditional moral values. That's the lesson here. You did not misspeak. You did not say any single solitary thing for which you need to apologize. It's the people on the left who are the haters. They are the bigots. They are the Christophobes. They hate God and the standards of God, and they're taking their hatred out on you. That's the lesson. Focal Point AFR Talk.